Manuals. Usually they come with your bike, but let's be honest, who reads those? And if you do, what do you remember of it? That's why BBB Cycling made working on your bike a bit easier with Watch That Manual. You don't need to read anything because we'll show you exactly what to do and what not to do. It's time to talk about your bottom bracket and how to replace it. There are quite a few different types. Here, we'll show you two of the most common versions: a BSA bottom bracket that screws into your frame, and the PressFit bottom bracket. We'll start with the BSA bottom bracket, consisting of two separate bearing cups which are threaded into your frame. Keep in mind, there are many variations, so make sure to have either your old bearings on hand or measure everything precisely to find the right ones for your frame and crankset. Begin by checking if the bearings need replacement. Remove the chain from the chain ring and feel if the crank rotates smoothly. If you sense any play or resistance, it's probably time to replace them. Before replacing the bottom bracket bearings, you'll need to disassemble the crankset and bottom bracket. The left side crank arm is usually secured with an Allen bolt and/or crank bolt. Once it's loose, you'll need a tool like the crank grip specifically for your bike's bottom bracket. This bike has a Shimano Holotech version, commonly found on mountain bikes. Turn counterclockwise to loosen the crank arm. Remove the bolt and gently tap the left arm loose with a rubber hammer like the dead blow. Now, you can remove the entire crankset from your frame. There are various standards, so identify your crankset and check the maker's manual if needed. Finally, we now get to see the bottom bracket bearing cups themselves. This is a good time to check their condition again. If you feel resistance or they don't run smoothly, it's definitely time to replace them. For this step, you need the right tool. In this case, a bracket plug or bracket grip. We have different tools for different bearings. Note that the drive side is reverse threaded in this case, so it's not righty-tighty, but it loosens to the right. On the left side, the non-drive side, you loosen it in the usual lefty-loosey direction. This may vary per bearing, so check this carefully. There are three crucial measurements to determine which bottom bracket bearings you need. First is the bottom bracket width. Measure this after removing the old bearings. You usually find the measurement on your frame or on the manufacturer's website. The second measurement is the diameter of the crankset spindle. Unfortunately, there are different sizes here too, so make sure to measure. The third measurement is the diameter of your bottom bracket, which you can also find on the bike manufacturer's website or in your bike's manual. If you've double checked everything, you know which size bearings you need. Check the manual to make sure each part goes where it should. Apply some assembly grease only to the threads. This makes assembly and disassembly down the road much easier. Thread the bearings into your frame on both sides, first by hand and then firmly to the Newton meter specified torque with the bracket grip or bracket plug tool. Reinstall your crankset, ensuring it's clean. First, the side with the spindle, then use the crank grip to tighten the loose crank arm. Now, check for any play. If you feel any, make sure all parts are assembled correctly and securely. In addition to the separate bottom bracket bearings, screwed into your frame, there are also PressFit bearings. These are, of course, pressed into your frame instead of being threaded. You'll need special tools for this, such as the bearing press set. Step 1. Check and disassemble. To start, loosen the left, non-drive side crank arm, as shown earlier in this video. Gently remove your crankset from the bearings and check how they feel and spin. Use a rubber hammer, like the dead blow, and a specific tool, like the cup out, to safely remove the old bearings. Be cautious and tap straight. Turn the cup out around and gently tap out the right bearing from the frame. Measure the inner diameter and width of your bottom bracket, or check the frame maker's website. Lastly, you also need to measure and know the diameter of your crankset spindle. Compared to BSA bearings, this may seem more complicated, but with the right tools, like the bearing press set, you can do it yourself. Sometimes the bearings are threaded on one side, but usually both sides are pressed into your frame. Start by applying assembly paste or bearing grease to the inside of your bottom bracket. Choose the right pressing size for your bearings. Place the drive side on the bearing press, ensuring there's some assembly paste or bearing grease on the plastic part, as you screw the non-drive side bearing into it. Press the bearing into your frame on the drive side. You can tighten the press on both sides. Once you've mounted the crank, the chain can go back on. For these bottom bracket bearings, use a tool like the crank grip to tighten the left arm onto the crankset. Finally, tighten the Allen bolts and you're ready to roll again.